Mr. Speaker, last week there was a message sent to people who take an immense amount of pride and work hard to ensure that we have food to eat, milk to drink, and so many of the common necessities of life. It was a message to the farmer who, in the middle of the cold weather and storms that we have had, was out checking their cattle to ensure that they are well cared for. In the middle of the night, they picked up a frozen calf, cranked up the heat, and warmed it on the floorboard of their truck. It is a message to the farmer who, on the 4th of July, while everyone is out grilling burgers, is combining their wheat in an effort to get it in before the week of rain ruins the quality and the value. Simply put, you don't have crops to sell, you don't get paid. Small family farms are struggling, Mr. Speaker, and so it is time to plant a seed of knowledge about the men and women and our families and employees that are the very backbone to our society. In committee, the point was made that we had not lost farmland in the year from 2021 to 2022. For the first time in decades, we had finally held for a year, steady at 7.7 million acres. However, we've lost almost 1 million acres in the last 10 years and thousands of family farms. These long-term losses are detrimental to rural Virginia's economy. We all saw the empty grocery stores during COVID. I think people are finally realizing the value of farm to table and have a relationship with their local farmers. However, due to the nature of federal law, if this bill passes, the big get bigger, the small take the hit. The nature of agriculture has drastically changed with the advent of technology and is a far cry from what it was even 20 years ago. But yet we still struggle because there is so much we cannot control. The perfect example was the extreme drought this summer, and much of the Commonwealth suffered. Crop yields plummeted, and feed prices went up. Behind those farms, Mr. Speaker, are a proud and hardworking people, a people who at times have a hard time paying their own bills. In 2023, USDA forecasts total farm sector debt for the year at a record high, $535 billion, an increase of almost $17 billion from 2022. In fact, Mr. Speaker, 84 to 90% of farms across the country rely on off-farm income. For example, my wife and I are in that category, as both of us work off the farm. These hardworking men and women often hire summer work or have full-time personnel, and while they have put pen to paper and realize they can't quite pay the market rate, they do have an asset that benefits their employee. They may have an extra house, as many of these multi-generational properties do, and so they cover what would be the largest portion of their employee's budget, their home. All too often, Mr. Speaker, those employees become much more. They become family. This piece of legislation interferes with this delicate balance. If they cannot make ends meet, they may shutter their doors, Mr. Speaker, and sell their land, at which point everyone loses. The other scenario, Mr. Speaker, is that those buying the products will see an increase in prices to cover rising costs, at which point the consumer loses. It is important to remember, Mr. Speaker, that on average, only 16% of every consumer dollar spent on food goes to the farmer. Mr. Speaker, some testified in committee that this bill essentially is meant to target bad actors. Let's bring those folks to light instead of broad conjecture. Agriculture is unique, Mr. Speaker. Those of us grew up bucking hay and doing the backbreaking work necessary to feed our fellow man understand the true nature of service. Mr. Speaker, I know you and a few of our colleagues have taken time to come to rural Virginia. To those who have not, I would invite them to come to my farm to see how we produce for our communities and our Commonwealth, and to understand the delicate balance that Virginia agricultural exists within today. There are some things that are timeless in farming, though, and I believe that Paul Harvey said it best. It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners. Somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake, and disc, and plow, and plant, and tie the fleece and strain the milk and replenish the self-feeder and finish a hard week's work with a 5-mile drive to church. Somebody who would bail a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh, then sigh, then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. With that, Mr. Speaker, when considering this piece of legislation and others that will come before this body, I ask that you remember that without farmers, we'd be hungry, naked, and worst of all, sober. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.